Hello, I'm Michelle Westlander-Quaid and welcome you all to the Google Public Sector Developer Series. Today we're going to be focused on AppScript, and we'll have a presentation by Mahshad Haeri, and she will cover Google AppScript, which really helps you have a platform to bring your great ideas to life and enhance your user experience. And she'll cover basic information regarding what Google AppScript is and what you can accomplish with AppScript. So I'll hand it over to Mahshad now to do her introduction.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of Google Developer Series. What we'll be covering today are the basics of Google Apps scripting. A lot of developers out there nowadays are familiar with scripting, and Google Apps is basically a platform that Google has put forth to provide companies, organizations, people, individuals with a great tool that's hosted on our infrastructure in our cloud, where you can do production things like create documents, create spreadsheets. But what we haven't thought of is everything that you will need in the future, or some great ideas that you may have and you may want to bring to life. That's why we have come up with different ways for you to implement your own ideas. And what we're going to cover today are some of the very basic things you need to know when you think about creating your own scripts over our applications. So basic things like what is AppScript, what type of AppScripts can you create, what does a development environment look like, and I'll share some good ideas with you to help you navigate away from some of the common problems that I've seen in the field. So what is Google Apps Script? It is our scripting language that brings our APIs into life and makes them very easy to use using some of the more common language like JavaScript that you are familiar with from your previous web applications development, hopefully. And JavaScript is a very commonly used language, and that's why we kind of use that as the base for our platform. We do have our own APIs, and we use some specific RESTful calls to let you connect and use some of these services that we have in place. Things like email, Drive, Sites. And if you are a Google Apps user, whether you're a business user or if you're a consumer user, you're familiar with these applications. So I'm not going to get into detail with those. But basically what we provide is some way for you to basically extend these. And just a little bit of history for those of you who are history buffs. It's not like real history. But it basically started when we created Google Apps, and we realized that a lot of people, especially spreadsheet users, had these great ideas about these formulas and things that they really wanted to use and reuse. And spreadsheet formulas are not easy to recreate every time you want to use them. So I figured it would be great if we could give them a platform that they could create their own little piece of code and then reuse it. And wouldn't it be great if we could actually give them a menu that they could click and run their application? And that was such a hit that we realized, well, you know, there are some things you can do out of sites as well. What about if you could create mini applications from within a Google site? What if you could actually create a form and then have a little function that ran every time you submitted a form? And that is the basic idea behind how we expanded. And this little diagram that I have here shows some improvements that have been made to make AppScript a better tool for development. And you can see here that it started as just a spreadsheet function, kind of like macros that some of us were used to, and then it expanded to cover a lot more, including creation of user interfaces. So then you can really create an application that didn't really rely on a spreadsheet as its interface. So what does that do for us? Well, we created as we expanded and started to create more and more functionality, realized that there were different types of scripts that you could create. The first type, where AppScript was actually born, we named container-bound scripts. These scripts are created within one of our containers. A container would be a doc, a form, a site, a sheet. And you actually access and run the script from a container. That means that your script is now bound to this container. So if you want to share your script, you will have to share that the entire spreadsheet. You can't just share the script itself. That is a little bit limiting, I agree. So with these, though, you can create and expand functionality from within the containers. For example, you can create a menu within a document or a spreadsheet. If you're a financial buff, maybe what you want to do is to create a really complex formula that does something really great. And our engineers haven't thought about that. So you could create your own menu and create a submenu that allows you to run that function every time you want to run that great formula and calculate something amazing. What you can do is add these to spreadsheets, as I mentioned, forms, documents, and sites. And all of these, you can access your tool using the tools. I think it was the previous one. Yeah, using tools, you can connect to your script editor. And I get more into detail with what the editor looks like. But another thing you can do with spreadsheets is creating formulas that then you can just call out from within the spreadsheet, just like you call out formulas that are already provided to you by Google. These are the way, you add the equal sign and then add your formula. These work the same way. So this function that I have as an example here is where you convert inches to millimeters. And it works exactly like those native functionalities that we have, the functions like sum of something, average and all that. So this way you can create your own formulas and then run them. The other type of script that we realized were also very much needed were standalone. Because let's say you create this great function, this awesome formula, and you want to be able to share this idea with other people. Maybe you want to bring other people in and have them contribute and work with you on the script that you're creating. That's where the standalone script became a real great way of doing that, because you can basically create scripts just like another document or another project within Google Drive. And when you do that, you can then, just like a document, share the script, allow other people to contribute and work with you on the script. There is a caveat. For these things to work, you actually have to connect to the AppScript application. And it's really simple. I did say caveat, but it's simple. You basically go to your Drive, and if you click on Create, you can see that script is not one of your options. But in the very last, you see Connect to more apps. Click that. It will open this window for you, and you can look for AppScript because there are a few applications here that you can run into and install. Once you do that, it will install the application for you, and then next time you go and click on that Create button, you will have a script option. When you click that, it will open the script editor for you. Now, you create these standalone applications or scripts, then what can you do with them? Well, you can do several things with them. You can use them as libraries, or you can create web applications with them. A couple of caveats with web applications. It's no surprise you need to have a user interface. Obviously, every application needs a user interface. And for that, we have HTML services and UI services. Now, if you're a web developer, you're very familiar with HTML. And our UI services are very simple to use. They use the basic ideas from HTML, and then you can create your own UI. The other thing that you have to be careful with and remember to do is that when you create a web application, we look for a do-get function. This function tells us that you're not just creating a container-based application, or you're not just creating a library of functions, you're actually creating a web application. And when you create the web application, you also have to make sure that you save a version. We get more into details on how you save the version, but as long as you haven't saved your work, we assume it's a draft. And there is really no way that we can create a link for your application that will then be shown in a website. But once you do that and you save a version of your document or your script, you can then deploy your application using the publish option and deploy it as a web app. When you click that button, it will start by showing you a version. You can choose a version of your script, because let's say you're just adding functionality and you keep saving different versions of your document and your code. This can create multiple web applications. Each version can have its own link, its own version of an application that you can use in different places. It might be hard to manage if you decide to do it that way, but it can be done. The other thing that you will have to decide is, what is this script going to run as? So when you run a container-based application or script, it's always running as the user that's logged in. So if you're an admin, it's gonna just know your rights, know your privileges, and just run the script as you. When you create the web applications, you're essentially creating a link to the script, and the script needs to know, well, do you want me to run as the logged in user, or do you want me to run as you, the person who's creating this application? Where it becomes really important is when you do things that only admins can do. Let's say your application is creating users. Do you want anybody who gets this link to be able to create users, delete users? So these are important decisions that you have to make when you create your application. And then it's also access. So security, privacy is all very important. And you need to decide who can access this link. And basically, you choose that. You can choose to let anybody access the link. If you send the link to anybody, they can just open and run your script, or you can choose to only allow yourself or specific people. So once you do that, it will give you a link that is specifically made for your application and the version of the code that you're running. This will be completely linked to this published version that you just created. And if you go in and start to change the code and then go back to this link, you will not see your changes because your application is published and done. But if you want to be able to see your latest code, notice that little yellow or blue latest code link that is in the bottom. When you click that link, it will take you to the latest version of your code. So as you're developing, this is a great place to go, and you probably have to refresh your browser to see the latest, but you don't have to republish and resave a version and do all of that stuff just to be able to see if the bug you were trying to fix is gone. So this is a very little useful piece of information. The next version, or the next type of script that you can create and use, are scripts that are embedded in Google Sites. Now, I did say that you can create scripts within sites as a container, But if you want to use what I just showed you and be able to collaborate with people and then embed your application in a Google site, because that would be a great way to publish and distribute your application, then you can use the AppScript gadget, which is basically a little box that sits in your site and shows your user interface in your website. To do that, you basically just have to go to the normal insert menu in your Google site, choose the AppScript gadget. Once you do that, it will ask you to give it either choose from a list of scripts that are bound to your site, if you have any. And if you don't have any, you can just give it the link to the published web application that I just showed you before this slide. And that link will show the application within this gadget. Very cool. And while you're doing all of this, also remember that these applications will have to have a user interface. So you will have to have some way of letting your users see the data or interact with your application. And these also have to be web apps. So the do-get is required for these apps, and you also have to publish them as a web application. And the permissions for these follow the permissions that you set, just like I showed you, for your script. So just because your site is public, putting this gadget and a script in there doesn't make your script public. Just so you're aware of that. Now, let's look at the development environment. What does the environment look like? Well, whether you go from your drive and click on that script content that I showed you, or if you go through your container and go through tools and then script editor, wherever you started, it will bring you to the same editor. And this editor, on the right-hand side, you have some really handy tutorials on how to build your first script, functions that you can create, and some examples that you can follow to kind of get familiar with scripting. And if you're kind of a pro, you know what you're doing, you can come to the left-hand side and just start creating your script. Now, to make it a little easier for our users, our engineers have created some templates that will start with the very basic functions that you need. For example, if you start from a script as a web app, it will put the do-get function for you in there because it knows that you must have it. So that's kind of handy because then you don't have to worry about forgetting it. And with the others, it also gives you some of the basic functionality that you will need with a spreadsheet or a document. So version control. As I mentioned before, unless you save your script, it's draft, and unless it's a container-bound script, it will not really work as an application. So you always have to save a version of your script, and it's really good practice. As coders, you know that sometimes you do something, it's great, and then you go in there and you get creative and you mess up everything. So once you have these versions saved, you can always retrieve back, and it's easier. But you can also, so to get to the version control, you go to File and then Version, Manage Versions. And it's not experimental anymore. This is an older screenshot. But once you get to your Manage Versions, what you can do is you can create a version and give it a description. A description is really helpful because you can see that I kept saving these versions without really describing them, and now when I look at them, I really don't know what each version did. So this is bad practice. What you want to do is describe what is the version about. Did you add functionality? Did you delete something? Did you update something? And that will show up in the description area of your code or your revision, and that will help you later when you go back and you try to manage these versions. So once you save a version, you can't update it. You can delete these versions, but they are basically just there to stay. They're snapshots of your code. You can't update them. And just as I mentioned before, these versions, you have to save a version if you want to use your code as a web app or a library. Now, when you save your project or when you start a project, one of the things that you can see here, and these are for standalones, you can see that your project has properties, right? These project properties are attached to your project, right? They stay with your project, and they follow the project through unless you delete it or change these properties. And there are three types of project properties. One is info. This information is mostly not editable by you, because sure, you can describe your project and you can give it a name and maybe you can change the name, but the last modified date is basically kept by the system. And the most important thing here is the project key. This is the unique identifier in the Google environment for your specific project. Every time you want to refer to your project, when we want to keep track of it, we look at this key. So it's a really important key. The other parts of the project properties are user properties and project properties. These are key value pairs that you can add to save information in. The project properties are attached to the project as a whole. So if you share this project with a coworker of yours, they will see the project properties. The user properties are unique to the user, the logged in user that's interfacing with the script. So the user properties don't follow the project, they follow the user. And the separation is there because in case you want to save the stuff, and the project properties are also a way for you to save information. It's kind of like a small database, if you will, for your script that you can use to save some key information if you want to have values, properties that will be used with your calculations and things like that. And remember I said that key, the project key is really important. It's also really important because you can use your script as a library. How great is reusing? We all love reusing, right? So you can create a project of some functionality that you think you will reuse and reuse with different things. Maybe you have some way of reading a script, a spreadsheet, and then adding all the values and then calculating some stuff, and you want to use that for a monthly report. You can create a library of some of the functionality you created, and then using the project key, register that as a library for other scripts that you're going to be creating. To get to the library section of your project, you will go to Resources and Libraries, and then here you can see that you can enter some information, and one of these, or multiple of these actually, are editable by you. Or I should say, so the version, you can choose a version of the library that you want to use. Maybe you have several different versions of a script and you change things slightly. You can choose with what version of the code is going to be called out when you use the library in the specific script. You also have an identifier. This is how the autocomplete is going to identify your library. So if you put calculations here, you can always call out these formulas and these functions by putting calculations dot, and your script editor will recognize the library and bring up the functions that are available. We all love autocomplete, right? And the other thing that you see here is developer mode. So sometimes if the library belongs to you, you may want to be able to see the code and interact with it and step through it and maybe see the latest version of the code, not just the version that's saved. So for those functionalities, you can turn on the developer mode and interact with your library code in a more intimate way. Now, if you have a really large group of developers, sometimes sharing a script within Drive doesn't cut it. That's why last year our engineers came up with a plugin for Eclipse. And those developers that use Eclipse are really happy to see this, because now you can really bring this into your code repository and work with Google Scripts just like you work with any other code that you have. And these are some sample screenshots of how this will work. You basically import plugins, you will install the plugins and then import your script and then interface with your script just like you would with any other code. Now, the most important part may be the APIs that we provide, because without these APIs, you really can't do much with scripting. So we have three major sets of APIs that we provide. The first one is Google Apps Services. Like I said, app scripting is a big part of Google Apps. And for that, we have created extensive ways for developers to interface with all of our services that we provide in Google Apps. So you can see here that this list includes Calendar, Contacts, Docs, and Drive. And some of these have evolved throughout the years because we realized that, like, Drive is a much more extensive platform. It has its own SDK and all of that. So some of these also have other APIs, more capable APIs that you can really code with using Java and other platforms. But these are calls, like RESTful calls that you can make to Google services to interface with these and maybe create a document, see all of your Drive folders and files and create files and do stuff like that. Then we have script services. These are utility services that you will use to do things like check on the session, cache something as you're interfacing with your code, and create a UI and things like that. And in the most left-hand side, you see advanced Google services. These services are things that some have nothing to do with Google Apps, some have a little to do with Google Apps, and mostly these are external services, or I shouldn't say external. There are other Google services like Google Analytics that you can interface with. One of the big ones that I'm going to touch on again is BigQuery. As a big data source, you can store information there, and maybe you want to create charts from there. You want to create a data sheet from things that are in your BigQuery. This is a great tool to do that. Now, if we were to dive a little deeper into how these APIs are categorized and organized, you can see that mostly what you see with Google Apps Script services, for Google Apps services, you usually have a main app that you create your objects for. For example, here you can see that we're calling drive app.getFileByName to get a specific file. Here we're looking for all the untitled spreadsheets because we want to clean up our drive. I don't know how many of these you have. I have hundreds of untitled spreadsheets, and majority of them are just mistakes I've made. So what this script does is it looks for those and then looks to see if they've changed, when were they last updated. If they haven't been updated in the past 7 days, they can go and move them to trash. Now you might want to extend this to 30 days if you're a little conservative, but the point here is that you create a file using the Drive app, and then you go through and kind of iterate through the files and check on the last updated using these functionalities that are easily accessible and available to you from this, and move them to trash. There are also things that have set values, and you can see here that permissions and access, these are basically set, and we give you a set number of things you can expect from access. For example, anyone with link, the entire domain, or it's private. So these are things that you see from Google Apps itself when you go to share, document, or do things like that. And then we expose them through these services, so you can create your own application and do the same kind of thing. The other thing I mentioned were the utility services. This is an example of one, the base class. Here you can see that I am looking for the email of the active user in the specific session. I also have logger. Logger is how I can create my little debug or whatever, like the text, or put the email of this person in a log and then look at it and see if it's returning the correct value for me. So the other things you can do here are also classes that will allow you to create a menu, for instance. Remember I said when you create functionality for things like spreadsheets and documents, you can also create menus that allow you to easily access them. This is the class that provides that. These are basic functionalities that are very common, right? And then also we have enumerations that allow you to, for example, close a button, or I'm sorry, to create a close or OK or cancel buttons. These are commonly used buttons that we allow you to create an example for. The advanced Google services are really interesting, in my opinion, because they are expansions of what you can do to bring other externally available Google services that will enhance what you can do from within your Google Apps environment. One that is really, really useful are the admin directory and admin reports. If you have been working with Google Apps for a while, you know that it's really important to be able to create reports of usage and logins and things like that. And here, those APIs are provided and created. But with these advanced services, there's an extra step you will have to take, because we wanted to make sure that we connect you the correct way to the applications and the APIs that you're trying to access. So again, from the resources menu on your script editor, you will have to go to Advanced Google Services. Once you click that link, it will open this window for you. And in this window, you see these advanced services are basically listed for you. What you will have to do then is choose which advanced service you want to use and click them on from off to on. And the step you shouldn't forget is to click on this blue link in the bottom that says Google Developer Console, and go to the console and turn these on in the developer console as well, because these are, again, externally hosted APIs, and what we are creating for you in the backend is a console application or project that will then link these things to you. Why do we have to do that? Because not everything in this list is free. So if you notice, there are quotas that are free here, but if your application uses more than the free quotas, then you will have to enable billing. Then you will have to have a way for this additions to be paid for. So that's basically why we do this. There is and after this, it'll work fine. You will enjoy a whole slew of different admin capabilities and reporting and all of that. Now, if you're developing applications this day and age, you know that there are very few people that pass around credentials anymore. It's dangerous. It's not recommended. OAuth is a very good way for applications to gain access to services. And it's kind of like a valet key for your car. If you give your car to a valet, you probably don't want them to be able to snoop around and look at your dashboard and look at the trunk. So these valet keys only turn the car on and off, so the valet person can park your car and bring it back to you. OAuth works the same way. It limits the scope of what an application can do. And you probably have seen applications that when you try to install them, especially on our mobile devices, they'll tell you that this application will try to access your email. It will try to connect and read your contacts. And sometimes it's too much. I have said no to some of them because I don't know. I don't want this application to do all of that. So OAuth is a way for you to limit the scope of what your application is doing, and you will basically set the scope up. You'll have to have the consumer and secret keys and basically have a trust relationship with the application you're trying to connect to. For Google Apps, these are provided in your admin console. For other applications, you will have to connect and get the information. But basically, this is how you will establish the authentication between your application and other external applications or some internal. Now, I promised that I will give you some tips, so let's get to some of those. When you create a script, you must authorize the script to run. Why? Because let's say I create a script and I share it with you and I say, hey, John, this is great. Go use this script in your environment. And you ask me, well, Mahshad, what does this script do? Oh, nothing. It'll just create a spreadsheet of all of your data for you from your drive. Well, one way is to look at the code. The other way is just to, trust me. So when you try to make a copy and run this, we ask you to authorize this script to run against your account. And when you do the authorization, it comes up and it tells you what this application is trying to access. You can see here that the application is telling me that this wants to send email as me and view and manage spreadsheets. Well, if this is what I told John the application is going to do, great. But if I never told him that I'm going to send emails on his behalf, he may not want to accept this. So that's why for new scripts, we always want you to authorize the script. And this is a step that will happen as soon as you try to run one of your functions. This will pop up. But if you haven't done it, it will create some headache for you. The other thing that's important are events and triggers. Well, it's great that you can sit there and run your script if you have all the time in the world, but a lot of admins prefer to schedule things and have the scripts run on a schedule every other day, every night at a certain time. So for that, we have events and triggers. Events are things that happen. We don't really do them. They happen. You submit a form, you open a spreadsheet. These things are events, and you can write code that will trigger when one of these events happen. But there are also triggers that you can install. We call them installable triggers. And to access those, you basically go to your resources and you open up the triggers list, and it'll basically give you a couple of options. You can create you can choose what to run. These are basic functionalities that are part of the script you're setting triggers for. And then there are events. You have to tell the trigger based on what event you want it to trigger. And you can make it based on time. So you can see that this first trigger happens at 1 a.m. every morning. Or you can set it up to happen when you open the spreadsheet or do other things. Very handy. Now, we talk about scripts, but a lot of times your scripts need to be able to function and work against a set of data, right? So there's several ways you can store data for your app scripts. One is, an obvious way, is Google Spreadsheets. And with new Google Spreadsheets, we lifted a lot of the limits that were there. So like, for example, we used to have a 400,000 cell limit for our spreadsheets. That was lifted, and now I think it's about 2 million cells. That being said, you have to be careful when you put that many records in a spreadsheet, because it will take some time for the spreadsheet to load and come up. And if you're time sensitive and you want your application to run real quick, that may not be the best way for your data storage. The other available storage is the project properties. Again, I showed you how you can store value key pairs in the project properties. But project properties also is not a database. It's a limited space, about 500K per project, and each property value that you store can't exceed 9K. So it's really not for large amounts of data. It's for data that you need quickly and you want to transfer with your script. So maybe you put some dimensions for your user interfaces and things like that, but it's not really for large amounts of data. The good news is that we have a JDBC API that allows you to connect to some of the more commonly used databases: Oracle, SQL, MySQL, and Google also has the SQL Cloud SQL that allows you to basically store structured data in our infrastructure on the cloud. And it's very similar to MySQL, but hosted by us. The other thing that I think I also mentioned quickly was BigQuery. BigQuery is our big data storage solution. So if you have a lot of data that you need to store somewhere, and then you need to access this data and display it on a dashboard, everybody loves dashboards. So you basically can create a script that reaches back into your BigQuery, grabs information and displays it. You can also save information into BigQuery. You can create menu options on a spreadsheet that hits your BigQuery storage and grabs information from there. So it's a very, very handy tool if you're dealing with a lot of data. Now, with everything I told you, I'm sure you guys are going to go after and create wonderful scripts. And some people really like to share what they've created. And if you go to Chrome Web Store, you see a lot of those ideas are already out there. If you wanted to put your idea out, you could also register your script with Chrome Web Store. There is a process that you will have to go through, and once you do that, you'll be able to provide access to your script to thousands and thousands of users that have access to Chrome Web Store. You can always update or depublish. It's depublish, I don't know if that's a word, but you can deregister and remove your script from the web store. So that's one way. Another way that used to be for our old spreadsheets was the script gallery. This was also a very handy tool where users could just publish their scripts and other users could go to the web gallery and to script gallery and download and install these scripts and use them within their environment. With the new sheets, we are actually retiring this script gallery because we found a better way to do this, and that is called add-ons. Script add-ons are now available for not only Sheets but Docs, and they're coming to Forms soon. What are add-ons? Well, add-ons are similar to Script Gallery, but they're prettier and they are more integrated. So I'm going to show you a simple example of it here, but if you are on Google Apps, feel free to go through and experience with the add-ons, and you can see how powerful some of them can be. To get to them, look on top of your document, and you can see that add-ons is actually its own menu option. And then when you go to get add-ons, it will bring you to this colorful, beautiful pop-up box. And here you can see all the add-ons that have been published by users like you. You can also search and find add-ons based on your need. Maybe you're looking for a workflow manager. You can just click workflow in there, and once you do that, you can grab it, install it, and then it will start to show up. So once you install one of these add-ons, then when you go to your add-on menu, you can see workflow, which is one of the add-ons that I created, or not created, sorry, I installed. And if I click show workflow here, what happens in my document is that the workflow window will show up on the left-hand side, or the right-hand side, sorry. And you can see that I can add a reviewer, I can add a message, and send the document on its merry way. So this is one design. Somebody created this and published it, and as a user, I can go and use it. When I install it, it also tells me what type of access this add-on is looking to have. So I can choose to accept or deny the access. But let's say that I tried it and I said, no, this is not what I wanted. Well, no worries. You see that there's also a Manage Add-ons option in the bottom of the add-ons menu. If I was to click that, then the Manage Add-on window will pop up. And here I can go and remove the add-on. There are also ways for you to report issues. If you're working with the add-on and you find problems, you can report the issue, and somebody from Google will get the report. In fact, today, if you wanted to create an add-on, you will have to go through a specific process where you would have to file and fill out a form, and then Google will get your code, review it, and it's not a very, it's not just like you're going to create something and publish it. It will have to go through an approval process. So here is some good links that you can use to follow through what I just said and learn more about all of these things. I know we only have about an hour to go through it, and I know there is a lot more that you probably want to know. So developer.google.com/appscript is your best source for script API references and script examples, tutorials, and things like that. And there are also support articles that you can read if you have questions about things. And there's also developers.google.com/live, where a lot of our engineers go in and talk about things in much more detail and depth than what we covered here. So with that, I thank you for your attention and for giving us an hour of your time. And I don't know if there are any questions, Michelle.
We don't have any additional questions at this time, Mahshad, but thank you so much for the tremendous overview. We learned how to create and share a script. Don't forget to save a version, right?
Yeah.
And how to deploy it as an app, and utilize various services, including advanced services that you can turn on the developer console, and advice on using OAuth, which is like a valet key for your car. I will not forget that, which limits applications can do, and other handy tips, including how to publish your scripts and register them on the Chrome store. And don't forget those resources that Mahshad shared at the end, which would be great for learning more about app scripts. So thank you very much for that.
Sure, my pleasure.
Cheers.